Good morning and welcome back. Here we are live at the White Mule Winery on the high plains of Gasconade County. 41 degrees here at airtime and a beautiful blue sky it is. What a difference 7 days make because last Thursday we weren't on the air. We could get here, but I don't think anybody else could have made it. We had that really sizable snowstorm. It's hard to kind of measure here up on, you know, the higher places where the wind moves it around, but, you know, people in the neighborhood were talking 10 inches, you know, and I believed it, and it's almost all dissipated now, except on the north sides and where we pushed it all together to clean the parking lot off, but the fields are clean, and a good weather forecast we have coming up the next, I don't know, I look down the next 10 days, look pretty presentable. Maybe a little rain here and there, but for the most part, ought to be a great Valentine's weekend, right, Grace?
Hopefully so, yes.
Hopefully so, yes, no doubt. Well, good to have you along here on KTUI, 1560 AM, 94.1 FM, or possibly you're watching on Facebook Live. Good for you to be along this beautiful February day. And by the way, well over halfway through the winter, and that's always good, and you can certainly tell that the days are getting longer, and that's really good also. So have a little more sun out there, and you can tell on certain times when you're out in the sun that it's got a warmth factor to it. So that's all good news for us spring watchers, you know. And the groundhog, though, said we better be ready for another 6 weeks of changing weather. So we'll be prepared for that. Hey, this morning we're going to be talking about one of our favorite subjects around here. It's the Rock Island Rail Trail that have been talking about for probably, I don't know, Crystal, maybe 4 years now, 5 years, or maybe longer than that. Longer than that. Kristen Newald is a lady that has spent numerous hours and numerous years on this vision, and it's been a bumpy road without a doubt. And you know, we've communicated a lot, and over that 4 or 5 years, whatever period of time it is, we've had some really good moments talking about it, and then we thought, well, we don't know. But at this juncture, it looks very, very, I mean, it is. The state has taken that over in regard to, you know, creating a park along that corridor. And I say taking it over. While they have absolute control of that, the Federal Rails to Trail Act, the federal government will always own, you know what I'm saying, or have some controlling factor in that trail no matter what, because in the Federal Rail to Trail, if I recall right, because of safety, because of security, national security, because of other reasons, they would never lose their right to use that in case of a national security. Am I correct?
Yes. The state parks is actually the trail manager, but the rail corridor remains intact, so if there's ever a need for a railroad or some other use, as you said, for national security or other reasons, then it could be used for that. The trail just simply keeps the corridor intact so that the property is maintained.
Which makes, you know, a lot of sense. I mean, they have a corridor along, excuse me, throughout the state of Missouri, you know, basically, that it is there already in case it's needed. And you know, a rail would be good. You know what I'm saying? I mean, a rail would serve our interest in our, the economy and things, whether high-speed train, rail, or freight, whatever, you know. I mean, it would also serve our area very well, but we're terribly happy for the DNR to take over that particular trail, and we're really happy that they're starting to go through the towns and having meetings in regard to how this infrastructure really gets put together.
Yes, yes.
And how is that? I didn't go to any of those meetings, but you know, I know that there are grants, I think, available for towns along that corridor to help secure, you know, what they need, you know, in order to get that trail up and running.
So Missouri State Parks is and has been meeting with communities along the corridor. There's about 23 communities that the corridor runs through the middle of, so it makes it a very different trail than the Katy Trail. And so they've been meeting with the town, city councils, mayors, whomever, to discuss the process by which cities who are interested in going ahead and developing trail can go ahead and do that. State Parks will not be using any of their funds that they currently get from the state to develop the park. So this is going to be left up to partnerships between cities, counties, corporations, individuals, that kind of thing. So there's a legal process that the towns have to go through. They have to sign a contract with the state that kind of lays out the responsibilities that the cities will take on. A lot of, well, not a lot, but several of the towns have already been raising money over the last decade to facilitate trail building. And for a lot of our communities, especially Owensville and even Gerald, Bland, Bell, and then on further down, Eldon, are looking at the safe routes to schools, because where the corridor comes, it connects our schools to the rest of the community. And as you know, in Owensville, kids can't ride their bikes or walk to school because the highway separates the school campus from the rest of town. So a lot of communities are also working with school districts to look at building trail through towns to make that connection so kids can walk or ride bikes to school without a safety issue.
You know, that in itself is a very big deal as far as I'm concerned. I mean, we that know the familiar layout there is a Highway 19 goes over the top of the trail, but the kids can't really use the highways, you know, to get to school from Owensville. So if that can be a trail of either bike or walking, you know, it will give access to those kids that maybe cut down a little bit on the traffic situation. I mean, if you know, if they got access there, you know, it's good exercise, obviously, to do that, and it gives them more connectivity, you know, to that school and to their activities that parents may not have to be the chauffeur, you know, necessarily to do that. And you know, I think there's something awful special too about you know, when kids or a group of kids, you know, get together and, you know, they ride together, you know, and or walk, you know, to school together. It kind of from each community, it kind of gives them time to visit, you know, and have a good time.
Yes, it's good exercise.
It is. Exactly. It's great exercise. So, you know, that will probably be some of the first things, you know what I'm saying, that
Yes.
will be taken care of in order to get that in shape.
I think, yes, and I can't tell you what the timeline is. State Parks doesn't really know for sure. There's some things that processes they have to go through, including environmental studies and engineering. We're fortunate we do have some engineering that has been completed due to some grants that Missouri Rock Island Trail received over the last few years. But they anticipate that the towns will probably be first to develop trails in their city limits, and then hopefully the connections will be made between those as time goes on.
So what is needed in regard to developing, this as a safe, rideable, or walkable trail? I mean, I know the surface, is an important part of that. What are they planning on using for the surface of the trail itself?
So they will be using a rock base within crushed limestone on top of it. And if you've ever been on the Katy Trail, the crushed limestone is a minus type of, not gravel, but rock that over time gets crushed and packed, so the surface is really pretty good. And I know, I was reading on Facebook this morning, people were saying, oh, it needs to be paved. Well, pavement is great, but it's expensive and harder to maintain. So crushed limestone is really a good thing. And I can tell you from having ridden trails all over the country, the Katy Trail is one of the best crushed limestone trails anywhere that can be found. In some cases, you really can't tell that you're not on pavement.
Well, that's because, Missouri is the heart, of great limestone.
Exactly.
And it all has to do with that and the fineness of that grind when they do it. I mean, we use a lot of what they call tailings. These are things that processed out of maybe a little lower grade of limestone, but it's very fine, and it packed extremely well in our barns where we have cattle. We put that down, instead of concrete. It's easier on the cattle's feet, and it's really extremely permeable. You put straw and the manure and things get on that. But the great part about that is that it's if you do grab a little bit when you're taking things out, there's no harm to the environment. What I'm saying? That limestone is also good, to have there. And as long as they crown that a little bit and put 4 to 6 inches on that over the top of a better base, they're going to be very surprised how good of a corridor that will be. And it's not tacky, you know what I'm saying? It's not sticky a few hours after rain, when it's drained properly. It's just in great shape, and it will make a great base. And cost-wise, it's a great alternative for aggregate, so. And I would bet you that along that corridor that there are numerous quarries.
Yes.
That is right there and very accessible. So it's going to be a limestone base to that, but there's other things I'm sure that need to be to secure that, things like crossings. They'll have to engineer, I guess, or some places where cars, what I'm saying, and other things can't get on that, necessarily. So they'll need some signage and some access points.
Yes, state parks will be taking care of that. There's currently, with the Missouri State Park Foundation, is in the process of raising funds to help state parks secure the property. Where there are crossings, obviously there'll need to be signage. Generally on a trail like this, it's up to the trail user to be responsible for, looking both ways before they cross.
Right.
And that typically state parks will put up what are called bollards, which are those posts with arms that keep people from trying to drive in, because in most cases the trail is probably going to be between 8 and 12 feet wide, which looks like a little dirt road alley, but motorized vehicles will damage the trail.
Of course they will. So, yes, and so they put these up to limit that access, and pardon my cough today. I don't know. Some days it's there, Grace, and other days it's not. So there is, the governor has put in his budget a tidy sum for development of this corridor.
Yes.
Like $69
$69 million.
$69 million is, that's awesome.
It is, and we're really excited because, you know, as a cyclist and a walker, I'm excited about the trail for that reason, but I think the governor really has a vision of the economic development that investment will bring to central Missouri and 23 communities along the corridor. I think the money in the budget is probably part of the infrastructure funding, and some of that money does have to be used on non-motorized transportation, so it's a good fit. So we're excited and hopeful that the legislature will pass that part of the budget through, because it'll be a huge for our communities.
You know, it is, and so I'm sure you're doing your lobbying work, as we all will, and talk with our representatives to make sure that they're on board, because you know, there's some people that I've talked with, you know, not real recently, but you know, that, you know, was kind of questioning the economic benefit, you know what I'm saying, of a trail, and thinking, who, you know, very few people, I mean, their comment was, very few people, how many people ride that trail, and very few people are going to benefit from that. And my pushback to that is, well, let's really talk about that a little bit, because in fact, you know, the trail ridership, they need, you know, an awful lot of services, and they spend a lot of money in those communities that they're on, and especially in our area. There's no question that Owensville, Rosebud, Buford will become a destination, you know what I'm saying, since it's going to stop in this area, you know, and start, that they're going to need lodging, you know, they're going, you know, to need food, and, you know, maintenance on their bicycles, all of those particular things. But it gives an opportunity for a vision, you know, for many entrepreneurs that is along that corridor. You know, I think about Herman and the number of bed and breakfasts they have, hundreds, you know, and part of those, many of those not only come from the tourism there, well, they all basically come from the tourism, but a lot of those are KT users, you know what I'm saying, that use those B&Bs and that investment that is made in those homes are great for everybody. They're great for our schools. They give us a better tax base. In areas along the railroad track that has often been on the other side of the track, become development corridors where reinvestment in those communities occur.
Yes. I think what I like to compare it to is, I'm not a hunter, so I have no idea how many people actually hunt. So if you're not a trail user, you probably don't have a clue how many people really do use the trail. The last 2 years have been frustrating, but I always tell people, if there's one good outcome from COVID, it was the fact that people are getting outside. There were times over the last 2 years where the trailhead at Herman, in the middle of the week, the parking lot, which is a pretty reasonable sized parking lot, was full. Last September, my husband rode from Herman to Portland, which is probably one of the lesser used parts of the Katy Trail. And on a weekday after school had started, he counted over 100 trail users. So they're out there. If you don't go on the trail regularly, you probably don't know that. And just to give you some statistics, a 2012 economic impact study of the Katy Trail showed an $18 million economic impact for the state of Missouri, and that was 10 years ago, at the end of the recession, when probably travel wasn't as great as what it is now. So we anticipate the Rock Island Trail will at least meet that, if not exceed that, because...
And that number was, again, what, 10?
18 million.
$18 million.
In economic impact. And the Katy Trail, like I say, does not run through the middle of towns. It really only runs through Boonville and Sedalia. It runs on the edge of town, so a lot of times people using the Katy Trail don't make it all the way into town. Whereas, as you know, here the Rock Island actually, is on the backside of Main Street in most of our communities. So it's just hop, skip, and jump off the trail to visit those businesses and
well, you see most of them.
And, yeah.
You're riding through an awful lot of those, and you see that, I think of Gerald, well, all of them, Rose, but I mean, the businesses are right there along the 50 corridor, because it does, run kind of contiguous, you know what I'm saying, in some areas along 50 and 28. So those are the center of those communities that are there, which is a great point, because I mean, we were down yesterday and went to the wine country at Dutso and Marthasville, and the Katy is down there. There was people on that, I'm saying, yesterday, and there's a few towns, I'm saying, along that. But not once you leave that corridor, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Once you leave, or that area, once you leave that area, all the way across the state, there's a few towns, that you edge up to, but, nothing like you're looking at on the Rock Island. And, I mean, it's a beautiful setting, no question about it, along the Katy. But as far as my view of things, the Rock is going to be unbelievable gorgeous because of the diversity. I mean, you basically on the Katy have a river on one side and a bluff on the other, and a lot of cornfields. Nothing wrong with that.
No.
But this is going to be totally different, and there's going to be a lot of more interaction with the community and a lot more interaction with nature along that corridor.
And the Rock Island also has some features that the Katy doesn't have. There are some pretty major bridges. The Gascogne Bridge is a quarter of a mile long over the Gasconade River and sits about 100 feet above the river. Then there's the Marys and the Osage River bridges. There's 3 big tunnels, the longest being 1,600 feet wide, and the Freeburg Tunnel actually goes under part of the city of Freeburg. So we find that through research that Rails Trails Conservancy, a national trail advocacy group, has done, that people will come from further away if the trail is long and has unique features. So by building the Rock Island Trail and then making the connection to the Katy Trail, we'll have almost 500 miles of a loop trail between Kansas City and St. Louis that will attract people from not only all over the country, but all over the world. I'm not going to drive 500 miles to do a 30-mile trail unless I just happen to be in the area. But I would drive 500 miles or farther than that to do a 500-mile trail and take a week. And as we often tell people, it takes about 4 hours to drive across the state of Missouri. It takes about an hour to fly across the state of Missouri. It takes 4 or 5 days to ride a bicycle across Missouri. So then you're spending money on food and lodging and that kind of thing. So there is an economic benefit.
And it's deeper than that even. I mean, I when I pulled up, I seen your bike rack, what I'm saying, on the back of your car. I mean, these people, I once knew that you talked about hunting and fishing. It's a huge benefit, what I'm saying, in the state of Missouri. I think like $7 billion at one time of directing. I mean, look at the boat manufacturers, and, the lake and the fishing and all of those particular things. Well, if you dive deep, what I'm saying, into the bike business, there's an awful lot of business created, from those things. I stopped yesterday, we stopped at Dickie Bub's, and they had a bike sitting there, and it had 2 of them. But they were like $3,300, and I looked at them and I thought, but I guess there's electric. Is there? Are they electric?
Maybe not. I mean, I will tell you that I have 5 bicycles, and my most expensive one was $6,000. And it has electronic shifters. It's not an electronic bike. Some more statistics will tell you that the average cyclist on the Katy Trail 10 years ago was about 55 years old and had an average income of over $75,000. So, like, you know, people talk about people who ride motorcycles have money. Well, people who ride bicycles have money too, because most serious cyclists have
Good bikes.
good bikes, yes. And, you know, we ride all over the country. In fact, last summer we rode from Seattle, Washington to Portland, Maine. So you need to do it on a better bike because you don't want to be dealing with mechanical issues. So, you know, cyclists spend money on bicycles, on bike clothing, on bike gadgets, on food, on entertainment. So, and there are a lot of tour groups that actually, you know, you said something about the Katy Trail using the B&Bs in Herman. Well, there's a lot of tour companies that have organized trail rides that, you know, people pay money to ride the trail and they stay in places along the trail. So there is a tourism business built around, you know, organized tours.
You know, it's when you talk about economics, it's really interesting how things interact together. You know, and you know how big it really is. Because I mean, on this particular, you know, situation, going back, these towns, they're like a picture of towns as they was, you know, 75 years ago. You know, in a lot of those situations, they're still the same brick buildings, you know, maybe even longer than that. But they're, you know, they're there. They're far redevelopment. You know, it's going to put, you know, a lot of dollars in that. And you know, we are short of housing, you know, everywhere. But once you get this core of businesses there, it facilitates other businesses. It facilitates bedroom communities, you know, to live there. Because, you know, it's kind of like if you're a biker and or if you're a golfer, you want to have access to that golf course, so you build around that. You know what I'm saying? And this will create the same opportunity for enthusiasts, you know, that, you know, want to ride every day, want a place to run every day, want a place to walk, and it's going to facilitate those kind of opportunities.
And I think too that, you know, our communities, my husband and I work with the Chamber and the Tourism Committee for Owensville and Rosebud, and, you know, our communities have interesting things to offer. We have the old Railroad Hotel is the Gasconade County Historical Museum. There are numerous other little shops of interest and things of interest in our communities that I think over time, while we kind of sometimes don't realize we have those treasures, we will figure it out and have those for places for people to stop and see. So
yeah, I mean, when other people start noticing what you have, it makes us take a second look and appreciate the quality of life, you know, that we're surrounded by, and those opportunities that are in our backyard. So it is an exciting time. You know, it's a process, and it's not an event, but, you know, it's going to take time for all of this.
Yeah.
You're not going to, you know, put a key in there and start this thing up, and, you know, it will be over time that you know, businesses and bed and breakfast and those things come into being. But I can tell you right now, there's a lot of enthusiasm, you know, and there's a lot of plans being made right here that are going to be investments in our community that are going to pay dividends and give a lot of people a lot of hope. I mean, not every business is $1 million business. You know, I mean, it's the bed and breakfast business is a passion for the most part. I mean, there's some economic benefit to that. There's no question about it. But you know, meeting those people and enjoying the time that they have, you know, people just want to have show places, are places where they can be hospitable and learn things. It's incredible here how many people we've had, and I don't get to spend the time, anymore with our bed and breakfast guests, as I once did. But incredible where they're from and what they do and what they want to see and the knowledge that they bring with them, and it's just an interesting business.
As a cyclist, we enjoy staying in B&Bs. In fact, we did a trip a few years ago on the Natchez Trace. We went from Memphis, Tennessee to Natchez, Mississippi, and we stayed in B&Bs. And what we found was that we got a better flavor of the local history and culture by staying in a B&B with a host that, had information about the area. And I think that's a lot of reasons why people cycle or hike, is they want to learn more about the places that they're seeing. So B&B's become a real part of that.
Before I misplace this thought, because I've had it twice now, when I seen this bicycle, I did wonder about electric bicycles, you know what I'm saying? Will they be allowed on this trail, or where are we at on that?
I can't give you a definitive answer because, and I don't know enough about, there are some electric e-bikes that have a big enough battery in them that they're technically considered motorized.
Okay.
It is a non-motorized trail, but I know many of the states are dealing with that right now, because right now I've seen people using e-bikes, and as long as they're not going 30 miles an hour, because
Right.
that's a danger, I don't think anybody really cares. But state parks probably has to make some decisions about what is exactly allowed. There's an e-assist where the battery is small enough that just assists you in pedaling, and then there's actually batteries that kind of do the movement
Right.
for you. So
Right.
and there's all kinds of opinions down the road. I figure at some point I may be getting an e-bike, because that's, you get older and you need something like that.
Well, yeah, I mean, you gotta look at the overall, situation
If it gets people
there.
out and in the fresh air and getting a little bit of exercise, I'm all for it. But I can't really give
I
a definitive
understand.
answer, because that's up to state parks.
It's going to be a decision that will need to be considered
Yes.
as time goes on, because it's coming.
No,
you know
it
what
is,
I'm saying?
and e-bikes are definitely becoming a popular thing, as well. They should be.
Yeah, I mean, it's another alternative.
Exactly.
It's up for consideration, and brings a whole new group of people into that to
Yes.
utilize that service also. So all of those things have to be considered, as you look
I
towards
have
the
been
future.
asked about golf carts and electric scooters, and we always encourage people to reach out to state parks, because they do have a handicap policy, and so in some cases those may be allowed. But typically a rail trail like this, the KTUI Trail, is a non-motorized usage trail, so four-wheelers, other motorized vehicles are not allowed, and it's a safety issue as much as anything.
Sure, it is. So, the back a little bit on the governor's, proposed budget of $69 million. This is only for, and you kind of hit on it. It targeted for the infrastructure alone on that. I mean, there's
Actually, from what I've read in his budget, it's to actually develop trail from Eugene to the Gasconade River, and then from the Gasconade River to Beaufort. So it would be about 60 miles of trail on the east end. Now, whether that or not that changes, I don't know, but that was what initially we were told. So some of it will go to the infrastructure and management of the trail.
Okay.
But then, and because it's infrastructure money, it has to be spent in a limited period of time. So.
in a pretty quantized and approved method. I mean, it's not, you got to maybe be for the aggregate, you know what I'm saying, or for crossings or for whatever else that might be used. It's not individual, it's all for towns, correct, and communities?
No, it would be for that section of trail. That's I think it's 66 miles from Eugene to Beaufort.
Okay.
Would be the development, including, it's my understanding, the bridges on that part of the
Okay.
trail, which, you know, the cost of this trail, the bridges and the tunnels become the most expensive part, but on the other hand, they're going to be what brings people to this trail.
So the bridge we have in our backyard over Soap Creek.
Yes.
You know, it's a pretty high trellis.
It is.
You know, and
Yes.
it's pretty unique. You know, it's going to be neat. Not that I'm going to use the trail out, but I will get up there, you know, sometime and look over that and ride, you know, through our community, because that's a backyard that I've never been on.
You know, I actually was out there because I know the property owner where it goes through, and I couldn't walk out that far because the ties are about 3 times the size of a regular railroad tie, and they're further apart so you can slip in between. But you get the most incredible view of that valley between Rosebud and Owensville that, you know, you just wouldn't see anywhere else. So it'll be beautiful.
It will be beautiful. And you know, I mean, of course they'll need to put down a solid base on that.
Yes.
And, you know, put aggregate on that, you know, or something.
Yeah.
Or,
The shorter bridges most likely will have concrete.
okay,
The longer bridges, they can't do concrete, so they'll probably do steel plates.
okay.
It's my understanding that State Parks wants the trail built so that an ambulance would be able to access the corridor in
yes.
case of an emergency. So that's kind of the specs that I think the cities have been given. You know,
And there'll be railings along the side.
oh, absolutely. And the height of the railings will depend on whether it's just open to cyclists and walkers, or if horses are allowed, which that's another decision State Parks will have to make, then it's my understanding that some of the sidings would have to be a little bit taller.
Well, it's interesting to develop. In your mind's eye, how long before somebody, I mean, I know they're going to use the corridor between Owensville and the school, hopefully within a few years or less, you know, but how long do you think between Rosebud and Owensville?
I think it depends on the funding. If funding comes through, I think it'll be sooner rather than later, but it's not going to happen overnight. I've been working on this since 2009. I didn't think I was that old in 2009.
So that is 10 years. My God, he's 12, you know.
But I've heard estimates everywhere from 10 to 20 years. The Katy Trail, it took 20 to 30 years to develop, but that's a little bit misleading because a good part of it was developed, and just over the last few years they've, you know, done some sections that they hadn't been able to get to through Sedalia and Mawkins and a couple other places. So I'm hopeful that in the next few years that there'll be significant trail, and our anticipation is that once trail is built in smaller places, the demand will kind of become, let's extend it out. So,
Right.
You know, it's like I say, it's a matter of funding and you know, demand from the public. But if the legislature comes through with the governor's budget, I think it'll give the trail a really good kickstart. And there's some other grant funding opportunities through transportation, which I always like to really emphasize this because people become negative about the trail because they think it's taking money away from roads and bridges, and it is not.
It's designated before that ever occurs.
Exactly. Most transportation funding has identified funding that goes strictly for non-motorized transportation. So, you know, when we think of transportation, it's just not cars and trucks. It's, you know, people walking, people riding bicycles, people riding motorcycles. So transportation is very encompassing, including railroads, airplanes, boats, that kind of thing. So I really want to emphasize that the funding for this is not going to take away from roads and bridges.
No, it's already set there in the federal statute and in the Federal Register, and so much percentage goes to that. And you know, equally so. I mean, if you're in a big city, it's just as important to have a sidewalk as it is a subway, maybe more so to some degree to give people opportunity and choices, and to be able to handle the volume of people and access to the places that they need to go. It's just kind of the way it is. I mean, if we were going to build road and bridges, and not airplanes at all, where would we be? I mean, that's the bottom line, and it's just it's the way it is, and rail and all of those modes of transportation are important, even though we rural people like our highways, and everybody does, but it's important to understand the bigger picture here and how things are done here. So, what other things do you see when you travel through Iowa or you travel through Portland, when you're along those rails, what do you see as opportunity? I mean, I'm sure that artistic, things are there. I'm sure that historic monuments or whatever are erected so they can learn this is where Lewis and Clark crossed, or whatever, what I'm saying. Those things are to be, will need to be developed also, correct?
I think as a cyclist, we really enjoy riding through small towns and, places that you wouldn't normally go. Sometimes on a trail, sometimes not, but there's some unique opportunities. There's a trail that goes from Springfield to Bolivar, Missouri, called the Frisco Highline, and in the small town of Willard, there's a man that has a storage unit that sits close to the trail, and he's actually opened it up for bicycle storage for people who don't have a place to store a bicycle at home. He has, locked up, you can store your bike there and then pick it up when you get on the trail. He also has water and a shower there. So, there's some really unique ideas that people have come up with on the trail. And yes, we see artwork, we see historical sites.
Yes.
There's just an amazing amount of places that you probably wouldn't go if you were driving in a car. So, and then you meet people along the way. We were out in Montana and actually on roads that went through fields, and we had to open gates to get through. And a farmer came out to visit with us because I don't think he'd seen people for a week. And so, you meet interesting people along the way, and you learn a lot about, how really great our country is and the people that, have made it what it is.
I can see, like you said, art, local art, being displayed along that corridor, and galleries. I can see museums, that show a unique part of our community, our history. Things like the Thrashers show in Rosebud, that some very unique, some very much enthusiasts that put an awful lot of effort in those, things. To have that part of the context, along that, it would be very, very interesting. Rail itself, elements of rail itself along those corridors. There is a lot of old depots, what I'm saying, and a lot of old things that could really be unique and educational, in regard to how history was, and each town, can talk about their contribution, Rosebud's contribution to the world is, one of them is clay. It's the clay capital of the entire world, at Rosebud, and they mine clay right here to go underneath the Cape Canaveral, for the space for the first space launches.
Okay.
So, I mean, that's the base clay that they needed to have, you know, so it wouldn't burn up, and the right kind of surface. So that was mined here and taken there for those things. So every community, of course, you got to talk about Owensville and, you know, the horseshoe game, you
Yes.
know, that depicted, you know, that. And, you know, I don't know exactly where the Olarn Road crossed, I guess right in Owensville. Where that crossed the trail, but somewhere there.
Yeah, there's a crossroad, and I can't remember off the top of my head where it is right now, but I think it's near Springfield, Old Springfield Road.
Right.
But also, don't discount the many little unique shops in our little towns. You know, I've often heard people say, "Oh, well, cyclists, they don't buy things because they don't have room." I can tell you that I'm an avid quilter. When I ride, I look for quilt shops, and if I find stuff I want, I just buy it and ask them to ship it home to me. So that's something that I think some of the shops need to consider, that, you know, if they offer shipping, that people will come in and buy things in their store. Or sometimes, if it's close by, we'll make a trip back there in the car if we want something.
Everybody will offer shipping. Any student business person, we'll get it to you.
But, you know, I just want to discount the idea that cyclists don't buy things, because we do. Just ask my husband.
I can imagine that. And talking about quilts, next time you're in Iowa, since you like those things, Sac County,
Okay.
Sac City, must be the quilting capital of the world, because they've got that's where Karen's sister lives. And they have every barn, you know, every little bit, there's another quilt shop or whatever, and it's a unique part of our heritage. And by the way, the German ladies around here did an amazing job over, you know, time, and some of their quilts that they have did has brought amazing value, you know, to them. So whatever the interest is, it's out there. You know, you can almost say that somebody's been there and done it before, you know what I'm saying, to some degree. So that's all good. Well, we're going to take a little break here. We're talking with Krista Newall and talking about the development along the Rock Island Trail and the opportunities you know, that exist there. But we're going to take a little bit of a break here, and Grace is going to get us up to speed on this very important weekend coming up.
Yes,
and,
it is. Don't forget.
Don't forget, Mom's. What are we going to get her?
What are you going to get her?
Well, I'm going to give her a lot of work so she's not bored this weekend, I hope, you know.
I don't think she'll be bored.
I think I don't think she'll be bored.
I don't
you
think
know.
so. There is quite a bit going on this weekend, though. The Owensville Moose Lodge is having a barbecue Saturday, February 12th, starting at 11. Plates are $10 and sandwiches are $5, and carryouts will be available. Boy Scout Troop 22 in Owensville will have a drive-through Sweetheart Spaghetti Dinner Monday, February 14th from 4 until 7. All dinners are to go and is $10 per plate.
Sweetheart
Spaghetti
barbecue,
dinner.
that's pretty cool.
Spaghetti, yeah.
Good idea.
It is. Gaston County Republican Lincoln Day Banquet is Friday, February 25th, and that's at St. James UCC Fellowship Hall. Reservations are $20 in advance. After February 18th, they're $25, and then at the door, they're $25 as well.
Who's headlining that event, does it say?
Does not say. It says U.S. Senate candidates along with other state and local candidates invited. Not sure if there'll be a public speaker. I'm sure there will
I'm
be.
sure
but
well, if the U.S. Senate candidates, there might be a lot of them, you know.
if you're interested, call Ron Hardicke at 573-437-6517. Rosebud Emmanuel Lutheran Church will have their whole hog sausage dinner Sunday, February 20th. They'll be serving 11:30 to 2. It's held in the school basement. They will be having sausage and sauerkraut, dressing, mashed potatoes and gravy, green beans, corn, applesauce, and dessert. $12 per plate, 4 and under are free. Dine in or carry out.
You're making me hungry now. I mean, that is, you know, that sausage and, you know.
Have a good dinner.
Oh my God, that is a great dinner. And, you know, I mean, we grew up with that, but I never ever had turkey and dressing and sauerkraut, you know what, but it makes, I eat it all, you know.
And I don't think it's in the paper yet, but that is the 20th is when we're doing our polar bear barbecue at church as well.
Yes.
I believe.
I think you're right. And, yeah, I think I know you're right.
Yeah, I like to hear that.
Well, unless things change, you know.
Right.
I mean, I shouldn't say it. Well, I will, because it wasn't our intention when that was, since I'm on the board, to have our polar bear barbecue the same time as the Rosebud, you know, thing. But, you know, it all
You can
worked
eat
out.
twice in one day.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go. Gerald Knights of Columbus is having a Fish Fry Fridays drive-through every Friday, February 18th through April 8th from 4 until 7. They'll have cod, shrimp, and combo.
Gumbo?
Combo. C-O-M-B-O.
I don't know. Could be a typo, but, you know.
Combo.
I thought you said, I was thinking about gumbo,
No.
of course.
You can combine shrimp and cod.
You know, just so you know, it gets kind of problematic when you can't hear or see very well, like I'm getting to be,
Looking
you know.
forward to it.
You know?
And this weekend is Valentine's Day weekend here at the winery. We will be serving steak, salmon, and shrimp Friday, Saturday, and Monday evening. Sunday is just our usual pan-fried chicken, roast beef. Saturday we are full, and then Friday and Monday we are filling up, so call in and make your reservations.
So, Friday, I mean, we'll have specials all weekend, right? And there'll be some desserts here all weekend,
Yep.
unless the mice get it here and I eat them all or
Yeah.
something, you know. So
And then we'll have music Saturday and Monday evening.
Saturday and Monday,
Yes.
and Toby Fisher.
Toby Fisher.
So, okay. Don't forget about your sweethearts. A very important weekend, and you know, very important time.
It is.
Goodness, the hour is gone. It's always good to see you.
Well, thank you for having me.
And, you know, appreciate all the endeavors and all the effort you've put on this, because, you know, without your leadership on this, it's kind of hard telling where we would be on this, you know. But you and other people have been a force, and you've educated yourself so very well and been connected to the decision makers on this. And your influence has been being rewarded, you know, for your effort, and our communities will be rewarded for your effort.
Well, thank you, but I can't take the credit because there certainly were many, many people whose efforts went into this project over a long period of time. So we're just excited that it's finally happening.
Totally agree. Always a pleasure, and enjoy the weekend ahead. Special time. Take time and think about your loved one and loved ones. And the other thing we didn't even mention is, I don't know why, but since Kansas City is not in the Super Bowl, it almost forgot about it. You know what I'm saying? Almost. You know.
Super Bowl Sunday.
But it is Super Bowl Sunday, so that'll be you know, another great family and friends gathering. So enjoy the weekend. We will, good Lord willing, we'll see you here next week. Have a good week.
Thank you, dear.
Thank you.
studies. Exergen temporal scanners are available at Walmart and other fine retailers. Learn more at exergen.com. That's EXER.